Okay, my friends, good day to everyone. The most discussed theme in this week's Parsha of Chukat is naturally the one regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, who is instructed to speak to the rock in order to draw forth the water. He does not speak to the rock, he rather smites it a number of times with his staff. The water comes out anyway, and the Rebbe Shalom Kaviyachol says to him, Yad lo ha'amantem bi lahakdisheni. You didn't trust me, you didn't believe in me to sanctify my name in the world, and therefore your fate will be the same fate as the Dor HaMidbar, the generation of the desert. You will not enter Eretz Yisrael. And that's the simple explanation here. It's a axiom that whatever the narrative is in the Chumash Bamidbar, you have to compare it to the narrative that appears in Chumash Dvorim, because they complement each other. They fill out the picture. Why the Torah did it that way, that's the business of the Torah. But when we come to know something, to study something, to understand it, so we have to understand it from both perspectives in order to give it a clearer understanding. In Chumash Dvarim, Moshe says, "With Chanan el Hashem lemor," I prayed to God hundreds and hundreds of prayers to let me come to Eretz Yisrael, and the Rebbe Shalom refused me. And then he says a very strange word, "Lamanchem," for your sake. Meaning, as far as I was concerned, as if, let's say it's, so to speak, between the Lord and me, I could have gone. We would have come to a meaningful compromise. The Medrash says that Moshe said to God, okay, so I'll go to Eretz Yisrael, but I won't be Moshe Rabbeinu. I'll be Mr. Moses. I'll sit in the back. Social distancing. So the Medrash says that the Rebbe Shalom Kaviyachol says, okay, try it. So he tried it out, and he saw that Yeshua is the head, and that Yeshua is saying the shiur, and that no one notices him, and he's only Mr. Moses. So even though Moshe is the Onov Mikol Odom, the most humble of all people, who never looks for his honor, but he came back to God and he said, no, if this is the way it's going to be, then take me now. So implied in that medrash, there are many interpretations that can be implied there as to human nature. But implied in that medrash is that Moshe could have gone if he would have agreed somehow not to be Moshe. But if he's going as Moshe, then Vayisaber Hashem bi lamanchem. The Rebbe Shalom refused me for your sake. And therefore, Anochi meis b'midbar hazeh, I'm going to pass away in this desert. I'm not going to Eretz Yisrael. And so there, it doesn't seem to be that the sin, however we will understand it, I'll try to expand on it, that the sin of striking the rock is of such consequence that it could prevent him from going there to Israel. There is another factor. And the other factor is Lamanchem, because of you. And it's not Moshe's nature to lay the blame on others. We know that throughout Moshe's career, he is the strongest defender of the Jewish people. Even when they sin, even when he knows they're wrong, Moshe's love for the Jewish people knows no bounds. It's overwhelming. Yet in our Parsha, Pshuta Shel Mikra, simply the way the topic is written, Moshe doesn't stand a chance because he sinned. He violated the commandment of God. God told him to speak, and he in turn smote the rock. So here all the Meforshim run into the problem that, so to speak, the punishment does not fit the crime. And therefore, we have to go to Chumash Dvorim, where it says Lamanchem, that there's another factor here, having nothing to do with the sin and the punishment, having to do with another matter completely. For your sake, you're better off if I don't go there to Israel. And since my love for the Jewish people is such, so then I, so to speak, acquiesce that I won't go in Eretz Israel, so that the Jewish people will come there whole and without problems. So we have to deal with that. There's a second issue that I want to raise with you as well. All through the desert, I mean, if you're in a desert, water is the problem. That's obvious. That's why it's a desert. What makes it a desert is there is no water. There's not an adequate rainfall. Therefore, there are no subterranean wells, there are no springs, there's no water. The Jewish people enter the trackless desert of Sinai. So they need water. And immediately they complain about water. Now, in the Torah, it said that they came to Elim. And in Elim, they found 12 springs of water and 70 palm branches, great palm trees of dates, and that the people were able to have, to fill their canteens, so to speak, to have water in abundance, to have dates to eat. Is that a miracle or not? Well, it depends on your perspective. Everything's a miracle or nothing is a miracle. And therefore there were Jews there, because there's always the Erev Rav and Dosan Vaviram, and there's always a negative part of the Jewish people that says that was no miracle. Moshe knew, he looked it up in Bodiger's travel guide, that there was going to be an oasis there, and oases are not miracles because they happened, and therefore, okay, nothing, regular water. That's one incident. They come to Morah, and in Morah there is water, but the water is brackish. It's not very potable. It's not drinkable. The people complain, Manishte, what are we going to drink? Now, in the back of our minds, we should remember that Miriam is here and that Miriam has a well and that they're never really short of water. But they don't want Miriam's water. They don't want to be dependent upon it because that's too big a miracle. So they want natural water. We live in a time when people buy bottled water. Comes from a natural spring. We hope it does. So they didn't want to rely on Miriam. So they said, Manishta, what are we going to drink? So it says, Vayareu Hashem Shom 8. So God shows him to Moshe a branch of a tree. The Medrash says an olive tree, bitter tree. And he throws it in the water. Vayimteku Amoyim. The water becomes drinkable, sweet water. Then it says, Shom som lo choku mishpat v'shom lisohu. So the pshat that Rashi says and that all of us learn is Shom som lo choku mishpat. There at Morah, they were given laws, Shmir Shabbos, Kibbut Ovaim, whatever. But what does it mean, V'shom lisohu? What was the test? What was the test? So there are many interpretations, but there's one that goes to the subject that we're talking about. There they were tested again. Is that a miracle that Moshe throws the olive branch into the water and that becomes sweet? Is that God? Or no, Moshe knows he's got a potion, an idea, a scientific theory. Somehow the branch falling in the water will help draw away the brackishness and the water will become drinkable. So the nisoyon is, how do I look at that? Do I look at it as a miracle, as God's guidance? Or do I look at it as, that's natural. I can explain it somehow that Moshe is a wizard. He knows all of these things. Fast forward. Again, they're going to complain about the water. Again, all this time they have water. So it says there, Vayitzma ha'om lamoyim. The people were thirsty for the water. So why does it say Vayitzma lamoyim, for the water? It should say Vayitzma, they were thirsty. The answer is they were not thirsty because they had water. They had Miriam's water, but that's not the water they wanted. And therefore, they complained to Moshe. Again, the Mefarshim say it's basically the Erev Rav who are always complaining. So Moshe says to the Rebbeinu Shalom, what am I supposed to do with these people? We had water at Elim, we had water at Morah. So God says, there's a rock, smite the rock. He smites the rock and the water flows. People have water, this kind of natural water, so to speak. They don't have to drink the water of the well of Miriam. If you drink water that's miraculous water, so to speak, it lends an aura of responsibility upon you. We don't want to be beholden. The Gemara says that the Moshe said, "Miyitain." If we ask the Rebbeinu Shalom to help us, and that we would serve him all of our lives, and things would be good for us. So the Medrash says, "Miyitain." Why didn't they say, "Well, yeah, we want that"? And they didn't want it because they didn't want to be beholden. The nature of people is that they really don't want to be beholden. We see that in children. They come to a certain age, they have to do everything themselves, even if it's difficult for them. They don't want you to do it. So they didn't want Miriam's water. They didn't want miraculous water. So they figured Moshe Rabbeinu knows which rock, and that maybe there's a hidden faucet there, or there's a button you press and the water comes out. So now we fast forward to our Parsha, where again they want water. Now in our Parsha, it is very conceivable that they really want water, because Miriam has passed away. It's mentioned in the Parsha. And when she departs, the miraculous well departs as well. And therefore they were panicked. They had no reserve. So they want water. So the Ribono Shel Olam says to Moshe, "Speak to the rock." So there's always an escalation here. First, there's water from the 12 wells. That's not a miracle. And then there's water from Morah. Well, they throw a stick, you have to do something. That's not a miracle. And then there's water from hitting the rock. That's not a miracle. So to speak, Aviyochel, the Ribono Shel Olam raises the ante. He says, "Don't do anything, Moshe, just speak to it." But Moshe does not speak to it. Moshe smites the rock, and he has to do it a few times until the water flows. So why did Moshe do that? Moshe is also aware of this progression. He's also aware of how the water problem exists and what the Jewish attitude towards it is. So therefore, Moshe says, "I did it lamanchem. I did it because of you, for you. Not because of you, but for your benefit." So there's a famous piece in the Meshech Chochmah, the Meir Simcha, who mentions here the idea of what lamanchem means. And he says the problem of Moshe going into Eretz Israel is that it's not the generation that was raised with Moshe. It's a later generation. It's a generation that didn't see Moshe as a shepherd, that didn't see Moshe in Mitzrayim. This new generation only saw Moshe that he's so holy that you can't look at his face, and that he has to live outside the camp, and he went to heaven, and he was there for 120 days, and he brought down the Torah. The Jewish people are not prepared now, this generation, to deal with such a Moshe. We needed a Moshe that the older people would remember that Moshe played marbles. The Ponevezh Rav told me that he once was a candidate to become the Rav in his own old hometown. I think it was Kula in Litton. And the people that voted said, no, we don't want him to be the rabbi. Later on, he becomes the Rav of Ponevezh, the second largest Jewish community in Lithuania, and he becomes world renowned and everything. So he told me that he once met one of the townspeople of the small town that he came from, and he said, you know, it's always bothered me. Why didn't you want me to be the rabbi? And they said, how could you be the rabbi? Everybody remembered you running around the shul as a child. So that means something. So as long as Moshe was with his generation, who remembered him running around the shul as a child, the Jewish people will not make Moshe a god. They said for Ish Moshe, Moshe the man, we don't know what happened to him. But if Moshe led them into Eretz Israel, and there was this new generation that didn't know Moshe as a child and didn't know Moshe before he was Moshe, then this new generation would deify him. And we would become the religion of Moshe, and that would be a cult, and that would be akin to Avodah Zorah, because no human being should be made into anything more than a human being. That's the Meshech Chochmah. Now today, my good friend Simon Swidler called me to add to this. I'm proud to have a shul that people are involved in Torah. And he added this idea, which I think is excellent. I just want to expand on it a little. In Pirkei Avos it says, "Vasora mamoros nivra olam." The world was created through 10 speech utterances. Vayomer Elohim yihior, vayihior. 10 times it says God spoke, so to speak. He didn't fashion anything. The power of speech is the power of creation. The ability to create, because speech in our world is yesh me'ayin. It's something that was created from nothing. What's the nothing? The breath of the person, right? When I'm speaking to you now, what's happening? So the Ravoni Shalom told Moshe, you speak and the water will come. Moshe was afraid now. If he will speak and water will come, so then the people will say it's the same thing like Asora Mamoros. It's the same thing like the 10 words that created. Look, Moshe can create water. Now we can create water. You take hydrogen and oxygen and you put it together and you get water. But you can't create water by speaking. And Moshe would create water by speaking. So then they would say, well, just like Kaviyochel, God created our universe and our world by speaking, so Moshe can do that too. So Moshe is a God. Moshe will be an Avodah Zorah. And therefore Moshe said, Lamanchem. It isn't that I somehow mistook what God told me to do. Now it has to be that Moshe did this b'mezid, because if he did it b'shogeg, such a punishment, b'shogeg, an accidental sin is, we have a chatas, it can be forgiven. So he had to do it b'mezid. He had to intend to do it. Why would he intend to do it? Why would he intend, so to speak, to disobey what heaven told him to do? That's because Lamanchem. Because you would read it wrong. You would attribute to Moshe powers that he doesn't have. You would make him a piece of God. And we see in the world there's a whole religion like that. That a human being becomes a piece of God, so to speak. And that was the danger of Avodah Zorah. And that's why Moshe stands and says, Vayisaber Hashem bi lamanchem. Even though in the Chumash it says, Yan lo emantem bi lahagdisheni. So that Moshe's love for the Jewish people is such that he sacrifices himself knowingly in order to prevent their making such a dramatic error regarding Avodah Zorah. The Rambam says in his famous explanations of the mitzvahs, he says every mitzvah, everything the Rebbeinu Shalom commanded us was only laharchik es atzmeinu me'avodah zorah. That we should never fall into the trap of paganism, of idolatry, of raising human beings to the level of God. We should always remember the line between heaven and earth, and between the creator and the created. And that therefore this is reflected in the greatness of the Parsha and in helping us understand what on the surface would be a very difficult subject really for us to wrap our arms around. But I think that somehow now it resonates within us because we are aware ourselves of the danger that is involved, of how this can happen. So I thank Simon for pushing me on this. And I thank you all for watching. And I want you all to have a very good Shabbos, a healthy Shabbos, and stay well. And Sunday morning, again, we'll have Pirkei Avot. And stay well, everyone. Shabbat Shalom, and thank you.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Thank you so much. Big schus for us to come into Shabbos with the Rav's words of encouragement. I'm going to unmute everybody. And tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we have Erev Shabbos Chizuk, a short Dvar Torah to come into Shabbos all together. Tomorrow, 5 o'clock, same place. The link is on the website.
Thank you.